Hello, fellow toolboxers. Welcome to episode number 305 of the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox podcast. We have a wonderful interview round two with Ksenia Maiorova. You all probably know her already. She's heavy in the sports immigration space, does conferences on it, books on it, and even published a book for students that are interested in NIL, which is the ability for college students to make money off their likeness and stuff like that. We get into that, her practice and growth, and just handling these kind of cases. I think it's really important. She's always very fun to talk to, a very interesting person, has a lot of good opinions that are worth listening to. So stick around and we'll get to that. But before starting, I wanted to let everyone know that the Marriage Green Card course is happening. Sign up for the live course immediately if you're an immigration lawyer to get on the live one, which is discounted. info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com. Email me to get started on that with information. Again, that's info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com. And in general, if you are an immigration lawyer listening to this, email me so I can add you to our newsletter. We don't spam you, so don't worry about that. But it's just there's updates in the law that you need to hear about on practice management, or we have new products. For example, an E2 seminar we're going to be putting out. You want to hear about it to know. Also, we're providing tests for people to test potential employees. We're fine-tuning the tests and making it shorter. It's kind of long right now. But also, it's for potential hires. It's also for existing employees. You get test them, and through that test, educate them as a continuing education experience for your paralegals and the like. So, but you got to get on the email list so you get updated when these things happen. So that's the way to go. I also want to thank our wonderful sponsor, Serenade, a technology company that's been a transformative leader in the immigration space for nearly 30 years. E-Immigration by Serenade, which you're all aware of, is a modern practice management software for immigration-focused legal professionals to manage their cases, clients, forms, billing, and much more in an all-in-one solution with intuitive interface and bank-grade security. The software is trusted by tens of thousands of happy attorneys, our firm has it, and paralegals who use it to save hours of time for both themselves and their clients. E-Immigration has a bunch of awards it got from Capterra, which is the group that has reviews for technology sites. It's worth mentioning one last thing, that what separates immigration from the pack is its comprehensiveness. Over 100 features. These include features you might not use today, but to save you time, like e-filing systems. E-Immigration is the only platform that offers e-filing for all USCIS forms. Stop paying for multiple software. Let e-Immigration handle all your cases. Get more information and schedule a private demo by visiting Serenade's website or calling 1-800-617-4202 or emailing sales@serenade.com. That's Serenade with a C, and see what it is for yourself. Again, if you're watching this, I appreciate a 5-star review to help people learn more about the program. The more people we have, the more product we can put out, the better quality, the more I can focus on it, all that kind of stuff. Sign up for courses, get involved in the community. We're a small community, and it's intentionally that way because the smaller you are, the more in depth you get. Once we become 10,000, 15,000 like other organizations, they're good, but it becomes like this behemoth. So it's a different experience. Get in and get in this close-knit community as soon as possible. Having said that, none of the information provided here is intended for individual legal guidance. Please consult with an immigration attorney in private about your case, but you already knew that. Let's get it started. Hi, Ksenia. Thanks for coming on the show again.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
So it's a Friday after, I'm sure, a long week. How's your firm operations going?
Well, Fridays are my easy days, so I try not to do too much on Fridays. I kind of save those days to do admin stuff. But today I just did a talk at the Orange County Bar Association Young Lawyers Division on my work in sports immigration. They did a kind of a panel of folks who were involved in the sports industry. So that was fun. And now I'm back and talking to you. So very exciting.
Is that Orange County in Florida or Orange County in California?
Orange County, Florida, Orlando.
Okay. And so you just jumping around, kind of talking about admin stuff. You're obviously developing your firm. I've seen the photos on LinkedIn. We have a wonderful team that you're growing, new attorneys and stuff. Like, how does your setup look like personnel wise and just operations wise?
Yeah, so it's myself, a young associate that I just hired, and we have 2 part-time paralegals and a legal assistant. So the idea with bringing in the young attorney was to kind of teach her to do some of the writing that I've been doing, and allow things to kind of flow more efficiently through the pipeline of cases that we've been handling. Because what I found was that my paralegals were working very efficiently with collecting the documents that we need from the client. And then when it came down to sitting down and banging out that 15 to 20 page EB1A brief, things were getting clogged up, and I needed some extra hands on deck for that so that I could have more time to focus on business development, marketing, content creation, networking, the things that have sort of helped us maintain our reputation as experts in sports immigration.
I feel like we're at the same place in our firm development, that like being the bottleneck and everything. And a lot of my days just like, how do I stop being a bottleneck and give away the work? I'm surprised when you do your type of cases, which are very time consuming, that you are doing like I'm like with the type of cases, the volume you do. I mean, you must be slammed working a lot to be able to handle that.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I think that we do a lot less volume than most law firms. So I will never have more than 100 cases open per attorney at a time. That's just kind of the threshold that I'm comfortable with. And, my staffing comfort is I wouldn't want any less than one paralegal per attorney. So I kind of like to maintain that 1-to-1 ratio at minimum.
Yeah.
And it works for us, but I know that there are some firms that kind of do cases that are a little bit faster to turn over, and they might feel comfortable with a higher load. But for me, quality is so important, and being able to spend time and really think about developing the strategy for the case and to get to know my clients on a personal level is really important, I think, to the work that we do and the success of the work that we do.
And just doing these kind of cases, the writing is so intensive, and I'm doing an E2 right now. It shouldn't take this long, but like I know every time I sit down, it's gonna be at least an hour of full thought and attention to it. And it's constantly every day I gotta pay attention until I finalize it. And it's just like a big thing where I'm like, I have 50 other stuff I gotta do, and it makes it hard for me to balance that. So I'm really working on switching off. So I work on strategy, but I don't really get involved in the details of a case other than like a final review or something. And someone else is my associate is the G28 on it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that makes sense, right? I still do some writing. I like doing the writing. I like doing the strategizing. So I've retained a few cases, and my associate is not Russian speaking. So if it's a Russian speaking case, then sometimes I'll hold on to it. Or if it's something that's particularly complex, like we're responding to an RFE right now on an EB-1AM business that the associate has been great at writing affirmative applications, but I think when you're working on an RFE response, particularly some of the types that we've been getting lately, you have to take a more aggressive posture. And it's easier for me because I already know, okay, if they're talking about the salary criterion, here's what I can cite to overcome this particular issue that they're raising. And when they're talking about leading a critical role, I've already got a case in mind. When they're conflating steps 1 and 2 of Kazarian, I'm like, oh, that's an Iguchi case. I need to cite Iguchi v. Kelly. She doesn't have that level of familiarity with the precedent yet, or with some of the policy memoranda or the policy manual provisions. So in many ways, once we kind of get into the area where we're in a more defensive posture, then it makes sense for me to get involved and to kind of take the lead on that.
I have a new team member who's going to be taking the bar in February. I know he's been with us for a while, but he's going to take the bar and go and be a lawyer at the firm soon. And I was like, look, give him cases and stuff. Then I'm like, there's a decade of reading all these policy, all these cases that I forgot. You read them, you learn this stuff over the years, so you kind of forget that you know all this stuff. But it's like I need to really work on organizing the information to be able to transfer much easier. Ideally, they would look and read and just be enthusiastic studying the stuff. But if I could speed that process up, it's good. Are there any ways? I mean, you have you wrote a book, and I had it here a second ago. Is it down here? Oh, here it is. It's intended for potential clients and immigrants, but NIL immigration. It's a great guide. I mean, it's for yourself. If not familiar with this area, reading this stuff's really good to give you a synopsis of what you're dealing with. But what kind of do you have a library of information, data like that of cases to research or to read?
Yeah, for sure. So there was a time in my practice where I would just read everything I could get my hands on in the EB1A space. And what I did at one point was that I pulled down every sports related AAO decision for the last 3 or 4 years at that point and read every single one. And just figured out like what the trends were, right? And that has been one of the bases for my conclusion that you never, ever, ever appeal anything to the AAO, right? But it kind of gives you insight into kind of their mindset, right? So that was definitely valuable. But in terms of like a library of things that we actually use, there are a few tools that we use in the office. So one of them is that I have a binder with federal cases, so federal district court cases in extraordinary ability. So, you know, obviously only a handful of them have anything to do with sports, but, you know, the issues that are raised can certainly be applicable in the sports context as well. And so, you know, helpful precedents from federal district courts are things that we will often cite to in our RFE responses. And, you know, if it goes there potentially, and if it's applicable precedent in federal court. So, so those are definitely things that I, you know, have my associate read, and hopefully as she kind of reads them over and over again, she will get to the point to where she sees language in the RFE and that immediately triggers, oh, that I need to look at ZZV Cuccinelli for that one, you know, and immediately pull that. Now, James Betzel, do you know him? He's
Sure.
the founder of Prima Facie.
Yeah.
He had a really cool tool that he was sharing in the group for federal litigation practitioners, where basically it was kind of like AI driven, well, not necessarily even AI driven. It was kind of like a really fancy spreadsheet. And I'm really terrible with Excel, so I would never be able to create this on my own. So I have kind of a manual version of this, but it's kind of a if this then that library is the way that I would think about it, right? So basically it has kind of triggers. If the government argues this, then you cite that, and it's like searchable, and it had all these really cool features. And so what we have is roughly that. It kind of resides in a you know, a folder of different precedents and things that I've used in the past. And you know, and we have an RFP document that kind of has some helpful language that we dump in for things that we see over and over again. But certainly I think that the more tech savvy people are really good at taking that information and synthesizing that in the way that James has. And I think, you know, having that if this then that tool in my context would be really, really helpful to the practice.
Yeah, for me too. Like I'll read cases that come up and I'll save it, and then I'll forget where I saved it, or I'll make a folder and I know where that folder is. I'm so bad at managing because there's so much good content and ways not to on it. But I just organize it really badly. You mentioned the AEO. I was doing a podcast with a local call yours, Seth Feinberg. His family's in the airline industry, so he helps pilots and stuff. So we got into the whole thing about pilots. We found out. And so I went afterwards and I downloaded every 2023 decision NIWs I had to do with pilots. There's about 20 or 30 of them. So it's coming to head. The denials on these are coming. That's why they're being appealed. And, you know, I learned, like, first of all, half of them can't get past the NIW first part about having a degree or higher degree, that kind of stuff. And then the other half, they're saying it's not really national scope, just if you're going to help one airline fly. So there's more evidence coming that this isn't really a viable option, but you know, maybe people are getting away with it too at the same time. You never really know with USCIS.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the pilot NIW cases have to be structured in a certain way. So my position has always been that, you know, this is not an option for somebody who's just coming over here to fly for Delta Airlines as a line pilot. We need to see something that is unique, that something that this person adds that's beyond sort of, you know, just meeting the job shortage, which is, I think, the lazy way to argue these cases, right? Oh, there's a job shortage, so therefore it's in the national interest to waive the labor certification process. I think the valuable arguments in that space might relate to being able to instruct pilots. So there's actually a shortage of instructors, and instruction obviously has the ability to kind of, you know, spread its tentacles a little bit wider than one pilot flying an airplane, right? So I think there's that. I think there's, you know, not just pilots in the commercial sector, but potentially, you know, flight instruction for the military, people who are able to instruct on flying drones and things like that. Like, my dad's an airline pilot, so that's the reason why I kind of knew some of these things. So retired airline pilot, now an instructor at Delta, was actually in airline administration for a long time overseas. And you know, at one point he like got his license to fly drones, right? So that's kind of a thing that's, I think, valuable in the commercial and in a military application in many ways. So I think it has to be more than just like, I'm a pilot, right?
Yeah, they're taking the nurse route, like Schedule B, whatever, where you don't need to do that. But it's like if they were gonna declare pilots as like that, they would declare it. You can't just get around. Maybe like the first couple ones, maybe they got the way through. And yeah, I've seen stuff pass USCIS where I'm just like, what? But it's not something you could realistically broadcast and advertise.
Yeah.
You're gonna do it the way that a lot of people are doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are ways, but I think it's not just arguing that somebody's going to go work for an airline and they're fulfilling some kind of industry job shortage.
Now, when it comes to your firm development, I've been seeing a lot more videos of you online talking. I know it's like one of those things you do some and you get so much business, get busy, it goes down, it goes up. But I've seen a recent uptake of like videos. What is the medium for your marketing? Not just I guess social media, but you do a lot of in-person stuff and supporting athletes and stuff. What has been like some successful avenues for you to get those clients?
Yeah, so the sports side of things, particularly with the track and field industry, which is where I kind of started my sports practice, that's kind of something that I set in motion a really long time ago, and it's the gift that keeps on giving, right? Because I keep on getting referrals from people that I've helped in the past. I have developed relationships through various networking opportunities, going to events and things like that with people who are in a position to continue to refer me business, right? So I kind of think about marketing as sort of like a hub and spokes concept, right? So, you want to go to a person that has touch points with many potential clients who can then refer you many clients, right? And people who are constantly in the industry. So whereas an athlete who has a average career span of maybe 3 to 5 years might refer me a few of their friends while they're, professionally competing, but then they're out and then they're doing something else and they've forgotten about it and they have no immediate opportunity to encounter somebody who needs my help, right? Whereas if I'm working with an agency, right? I mean, these agents are in the business as we lawyers are from, the dawn to the sunset of their career, which may be 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, or 30 years, depending on the person. So I like to develop relationships with those people. Obviously, the book that you're holding up, this new area that I'm advising in, the NIL and immigration stuff. And I think that's probably worth talking about because it's so unique. And this is what I think about as a super niche within my existing niche, right? So, we've kind of talked about previously about how do you take a general immigration practice and funnel it down to doing, a primary case type or a group of case types in the way that we have with sports. I see now there's a young woman on LinkedIn who's doing that similar type of marketing for artists. You may have seen her, Electra Yao. Yeah. There are folks out there who are really niching down, and I think that's really cool. And, and I thought this was it, like going to sports was like the narrowest point in the funnel, but it turns out it wasn't when the NIL rules dropped. So I think for the benefit of the audience, because I think not everybody knows, right? NIL stands for name, image, and likeness. It is a series of rules, regulations promulgated by the NCAA. And essentially what these rules mean is that previously when you were a collegiate athlete, you were not allowed to make money because making money would compromise your status as an amateur. Now, following a Supreme Court decision, the NCAA revised their position on this and issued a regulation that said that you could retain your status as an amateur while making money from your name, image, and likeness as a collegiate student athlete. So this is great news for all athletes, except the ones who are holding an F1 visa, which was immediately obvious to me because I'm a sports nerd. So I was following this, I don't just follow stuff that's sports immigration, I follow sports. So when this dropped, I was like, uh-oh, we have a problem. And it seemed that nobody had considered it. So back in 2021, when they first came up with this, I was doing my annual installment of the Sports Immigration Conference, and I did a panel on the intersection of NIL with immigration, right? And the idea of the panel was we're going to talk about, like, is it really compatible with F1 status? And if it's not, what are the other options that might be available? And so Rebecca Sanchez-Boig from South Florida and I were the panelists for this panel. And it was the worst attended panel of the entire conference. There were like 2 people in the room. And like nobody had any interest. Fast forward 4, 5, 6 months later, Oscar Tshiebwe, the Kentucky basketball player, became the poster child, the face of the NIL and immigration problem, right? Because here's a guy who's like, this NCAA phenom, is statistical leader in every category, is winning all these awards. There are all these brands that want to work with him and can't, right? So he's going public and saying, I can't do this stuff because I have visa restrictions. So suddenly everybody's interested in the intersection of NIL and immigration. And so I started tweeting about, hey, why doesn't somebody get Oscar Tshiebwe an O1 visa? He clearly qualifies, right? And the response that I received was just so unexpected. The volume of journalists, stakeholders, agents, NCAA people, they were like, wait, what? O1 for a college kid? Like, you can do this? And I was like, I've done it before. And I never did it in the NIL context, obviously, because NIL was new. But for a variety of reasons, I'd had, the occasion to do an O and a P for a student who was still in college. These were kids who were actually in a master's program, but nonetheless, they were still in school, right? They were still technically on an F1 visa. We transitioned them to a P, and they had exhausted their eligibility in college, right? At that point. So this was my test case. This was why I knew it was possible, right? The pre-NIL. So they had exhausted their NCAA eligibility, but they still had scholarship money to pay for their program, right? So they were finishing up the tail end of a master's program, had the F1, right? But had also signed a pro contract, needed to make money under the pro contract, so needed to transition into a status that allowed work authorization. Now the OMP, per a document published on the ICE website, are allowed to attend school as long as it's, incidental to the principal purpose of the stay, right? So it worked. And I knew that it worked because I had done it before. So when I said somebody get Oscar Tshiebwe a visa, everybody's like, that girl, she knows something about this stuff, right? And that was just kind of serendipity marketing, I guess. And so I realized that there was a demand for answers in this space. I realized that we're working with a patchwork landscape of, NCAA regulations that clearly hadn't even considered the immigration piece of it. You also have an immigration law.
They never consider the immigration component of anything when these laws pass. Like, it's always like,
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And then, immigration law is obviously, it precedes the internet, it precedes the digital economy, it precedes social media marketing. It's like, we're working with tools that are of just a different era than the problems that we're facing. And so, a lot of the questions that were coming at me, I was like, I don't know. I don't know what the position is going to be. I can take a reasonable guess. I can tell you that, based on my expertise, this is how I see it. But the fact of the matter is, we don't know yet, because USCIS has chosen not to make a policy pronouncement. They could fix this easily with a policy, right? Congress won't act on any immigration related legislation for obvious reasons, right? There's sort of, the political hot button issue of immigration that prevents any kind of immigration stuff from going through. And so, so you're left with this imperfect situation. So a lot of schools, a lot of stakeholders are coming to me and saying, hey, we've got a brilliant idea how to work around this, right? And of course, these brilliant ideas are just so divorced from the realities of immigration law. So, they'll be like, oh, well, we're going to let them do the work here, but we're going to pay them for it in the home country. Well, no, that's not going to work, right? I mean, the work is here, right? Or, oh, well, they're going to donate all their earnings to charity. Well, they have to have title to their earnings before they can donate them. And immigration doesn't care where you get paid, how you get paid, or if you get paid. It's the service. It's rendering services on U.S. soil that under this very ambiguous and poorly drafted definition of employment in our statute, I mean, that's a conservative read, right? But as an advocate for my clients, I have to be able to take the conservative position because I have to be able to anticipate the worst case scenario and to prevent that scenario from arising to the extent that I can. So, the conversation that I'm having with stakeholders, and I had 2 of these conversations, one yesterday, one today, just this is for this week, is that, if we're talking about workarounds, if we're talking about ways that you want to do NIL on an F1 visa, what we're really talking about is not risk elimination, we're talking about risk mitigation, right? Because at the end of the day, people don't realize this. What I think, it's also being kind of divorced from the realities of immigration enforcement, right? Because they think, hey, we came up with this brilliant workaround. We published an article about it on ESPN. Immigration didn't come handcuff our kid the next day, so we must be good, right? They don't understand that it's going to come up when he files for an extension of status or when he goes to get his F1 visa stamp. And the F1 visa stamp is the part that scares you the most.
Yeah.
Right?
20 years later, they do naturalization, this will pop up. You never know. Yeah.
Right. And the thing that I keep telling people in this industry is I'm like, the consular officer is right, even when they're wrong. Yeah. Right? Because of consular non-reviewability. So even if they come up with, a way to justify their decision that doesn't comport with, a strict reading of black letter law, you're still screwed because you got your visa denied, right? Yeah, exactly. And then you can try at a different consulate and somebody may or may not decide to overturn it, right? So there are all these issues in this NIL space, and the book that Amy Maldonado and I wrote kind of goes through a lot of the scenarios that we've been asked about, scenarios that have been reported in the media, and we've kind of analyzed those from an immigration perspective. And I think, if I were to give a Cliff's Notes to the book, it is that, if you're on an F1, it's probably just not a good idea to mess with it, right? And if you're good enough to transition to the O or the P, it's probably a good idea to do that, right? And Amy, of course, is the brilliant brain behind the Hansel Emmanuel 01 approval, the one-armed basketball player who came in as a freshman to play in the NCAA. And that was the first known case in the NIL era of an extraordinary ability visa being approved for a college athlete. Since Amy's win, I've also secured 2 green cards and an O1 for different collegiate athletes, also within the NIL era. So, these cases aren't frequent, but it's an interesting space to work in.
Definitely. And there's some more people unaware of it. And there's so much more, foreign students the Trump era went down, but it's going to come back up, especially with more and more European athletes coming to the United States, foreign athletes from all the places coming. It's just, there's definitely need for this, especially to prevent people from hurting themselves, because they're going to listen to their agent, who may be a lawyer too, and they say, no, go do it, make the money and everything, and then we have to, pour rain on it and say, no, this is have long consequences for you if you do it.
Well, let me share a statistic with you that I just found myself by analyzing the results of the NCAA championship in track and field. In the men's running event, there was not a single men's running event that did not have a foreign national on the podium. Oh. Not one. On the podium, John.
Oh, wow.
So we're talking about, that's how stacked they are. So there are plenty more that also competed, but were not on the podium.
Yeah.
Every single men's running event.
Amazing. So it's a big thing, and especially because it's going to help the students pay for school. I mean, a lot of them have scholarships anyways, but there's a lot of costs of being a foreign student. This new NIL stuff is really helpful for them just to support them.
For sure. And I think what most people don't realize is that, not all scholarship programs are equal. So the way the scholarships are distributed at different schools is, it depends on the sport. It depends if it's a men's or women's sport, right? And so you have, for example, track and field is just going to have a very different budget than football and basketball, right? And so oftentimes what you would see is even with really, really good runners, they're having to split scholarships, right? Like they're going to go put two guys on 50% scholarships rather than bringing in somebody, one person on a full, and just because of budgeting restraints, right? So NIL provides those two guys getting 50% the opportunity to supplement their income. But moreover, I think that the really remarkable thing about NIL is this. NIL is the great equalizer, particularly with the non-league sports. Because a little known fact about non-league sports is that they don't make any money. Okay, so people think that if you're really good as, an Olympic sprinter, you're killing it.
Yeah.
You are if you're Usain Bolt, but Usain Bolt was exceptional even from a compensation standpoint.
Yeah.
So the way that compensation works in the track and field world is pre-NIL, they would, go pro, and only a handful of them, you have to really be probably top 10% in the world in your event to even have a chance. And I know people who are top 5 ranked in the world, like not percent, like top 5 person in the world, and don't have a professional contract.
Yeah.
But you get a shoe contract. So what's a shoe contract? Well, a shoe contract is sponsorship by one of the main shoe companies. So Nike, Adidas, one of those, Puma. And people will be surprised to learn. I mean, I represent world-class sprinters. Very few of them are making 6 figures. Very, very few.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, what also happens with these contracts is you have a good year, you might have a 3-year contract. And let's say you have one good season and then the next season, like you're injured and your performance just isn't great. They will cut you. They will cut your pay based on reduced performance. So, so it is brutal. It is absolutely brutal, and it psychs the athletes out. And, and training is expensive. The travel is expensive. Like at the end of the day, most of these kids are making less than $30,000 a year from the sport.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. World-class people.
Yeah, there's Olympic athletes who just don't make money, have to work at like Arby's or Subway.
Right. Yeah. Right. So they have to have an opportunity to supplement their income. This is where NIL is so magical for me, right? Because with NIL, you don't even have to be good. You don't have to be good at your sport. Yeah. You can be one of 3 things. You can be either good at your sport, or you can be very good looking, or you can have a good social media following and be an engaging content producer, right? So the equalizing factor with NIL is that, for example, let's take the University of Florida. A school that's well known for football and basketball, right? They've also got a great track program. Most people don't know about that. The people making the most NIL money at the University of Florida, take a guess.
No idea. I guess basketball.
Women's gymnastics.
There we go. Yeah.
Women's gymnastics are killing it at the University of Florida and NIL. They've got more NIL sponsorships than any of the football or basketball players on the men's side. Mm-hmm. That's remarkable. I mean, this is such an equalizer for the gender pay gap, right? It's an equalizer for those underappreciated Olympic sports that are not getting compensated. And it gives these athletes a platform when they graduate from college to then have relationships with sponsors outside of just the standard sponsors in their particular sport, to be able to stack their sponsorship, supplement their income. So yeah, maybe Nike gives them a raw deal and they only get $80,000 from Nike, but they might be able to get, another 50 from somebody like Pizza Hut, right? And those don't conflict with each other. So it's good news for everybody. So I love NIL. I'm sure you can tell, like, my eyes light up when I talk about it.
Well, neat stuff. It's always learning new stuff in these, especially from you, Ksenia. You have a great Facebook group as well for sports immigration. On LinkedIn, you post really thoughtful content. So I definitely recommend people looking up Ksenia Maiorova. Last name is Maiorova. Thank you for all the good work you do and all the continuing education stuff. It was really good that we ran into each other at the conference in not Miami, but in Orlando, yeah. When you think about Florida, I go straight to Miami, but we were in Orlando. It was a lot of fun, and I'm glad we got to run into each other there and set this up. to talk again. Definitely come on the show again if something else pops up or if you just want to talk about anything. Thanks so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Have you ever felt that the road to establishing a successful immigration law firm is riddled with unexpected obstacles and setbacks? I've been there, and I'm here to tell you, you are not alone. Picture this. My wife, then girlfriend, and I had just landed for a vacation, only to be greeted by a voicemail that changed everything. In an instant, once the plane landed, she lost her job. The very one job that was supposed to support us while I launched my own solo immigration law firm. Suddenly, our financial cushion vanished, and I was thrust into the high-stakes world of entrepreneurship with no safety net. Despite a slow start and a discouraging lack of leads and referrals, I remained determined to build a law firm that provided a 5-star client experience. After countless hours spent researching, watching, and implementing marketing strategies with mixed results, I eventually began to see my firm's revenues not only surpass my previous revenue and salary as an associate, but double it. Today, I run a successful law firm with a team of associates and support staff, and I'm the proud founder of the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox magazine, podcasts, courses, workshops, and more. But my journey wasn't easy. I made many mistakes, wasted time and money, and wished I had a mentor to guide me through the challenges. Although I was fortunate enough to find a few peers who offered support, I couldn't shake the feeling that there had to be a better way. That's why I decided to be the change I'd wish I'd seen. This month, I'm thrilled to announce the launch of the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox private mentorship and peer group. This exclusive group is designed to bring solo and small firm practitioners in a monthly, private, and intimate setting to openly discuss business strategies, share successes, even exchange invaluable tactics that they wouldn't share anywhere else. By joining this premium group, you'll not only benefit from my hard-earned expertise, but also forging long-lasting relationships with like-minded professionals who are committed to elevating their practices. Space is limited for this game-changing opportunity. If you're ready to make a real, lasting impact on your business, simply email me at info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com. Again, that's info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com. And I'll send you all the information you need to get started. Don't miss this chance to transform your immigration law firm and reach new heights of success.